another issue with the Craftsman LT2000 lawn tractor. The issue today is the mower blades will not disengage. Now typically to engage those blades, there is a lever on the dash in which you would push up to the right and down into a little detent that indicates that the mower blades are engaged. Now the issue is my lever is in the disengage position, and from the second I turn on the machine to the second I shut off the machine, the blades are always spinning. This is very dangerous because there is actually a safety switch that typically will shut off the machine when you get off the machine or when you go to start the machine with that lever engaged. However, the issue is that safety switch only senses when the blades are on when that lever is in the engaged position. So I think you kind of get where I'm coming from here. We're in the disengaged position and the blades are always running. Very dangerous. It's very dangerous, especially when you're mowing your lawn. Keep the engine running, set the parking brake, you think you disengage the blades, go to step off the machine to clear an anomaly in front of the mower, and if you're not careful, those blades could chop off a toe, a foot, a leg. So this is an issue we need to correct. Now, in order to see what's going on, we're going to have to remove the mower deck. So without further ado, I'm going to move the camera closer to the machine, show you how to remove the mower deck, and let's see if we can figure out what's going on here. Now, to remove the mower deck from this machine, it's not a big deal. It should take you about 5 minutes. A tool that I found to be very helpful with the removal of the deck is a pair of needle nose pliers with a 45-degree tip. So first, we're going to start in the front of the machine and we're going to work our way back. First thing we need to remove are these forward linkages that connect to the mower deck. And we're going to have to first unpin these hairpin cotters. Something else I like to do, I like to take these connecting rods, I like to rotate them a little bit so that they're parallel with the mower deck. And I find that this just helps to keep them out of the way when we drag the deck from underneath the machine. Next thing you want to do is ensure that the mower deck is all the way down on its lowest setting. So on either side of the machine, you're going to see that there are these lift arms, and this is what lifts the mower deck up and down. Where they connect onto the mower deck is towards the rear of the machine, and you'll be able to distinguish that connection point because there is a hairpin cotter. We're going to remove that hairpin cotter on both sides of the machine. Now to finish disconnecting this pivot point, what you may have to do is sneak a hand underneath the mower deck, lift up a little bit so you relieve the pressure on that connection, and sneak your fingers out of the way, and then you can drop the deck down. Same thing, here's the lift arm on the other side of the machine. We'll remove this hairpin cotter. Again, we'll lift up on the deck and separate this pivot point. So while we're still towards the front of the machine, we also need to remove the belt that connects the mower deck to the engine output shaft. So because we have most of the linkages disconnected from the mower deck, what we can do, we can pull on this belt towards us that scoots the deck forward. Then we can sneak this belt around this guide and simply slip it off the engine output shaft pulley. Get that belt out of the way. Now there's a few more linkages we still need to disconnect in the back. So let's get to those now. Now on the back left side of the mower deck, there is another, I'm going to call it a stabilizer linkage that we need to disconnect. So again, there's just a hairpin cotter we'll have to pull out. Disconnect the linkage. And also I'm noticing this bracket is loose. There's a bolt up there. Looks like I'm just going to have to tighten that up. What you want to do now is take your mower deck lift lever and lift it all the way up to the mower deck's highest position. And what this does, it clears those lift arms away from the mower deck. So now it makes it much easier to slide this deck out from underneath the machine. Now we need to start sliding the mower deck out from underneath the right side of the machine. We're just going to slide it out a little bit because we still need to disconnect the linkage for the mower engagement cable. Now to make this job a little bit easier, typically what I like to do is hook on a ratchet strap to the rear wheel as well as the front bracket that connects to the forward linkages. And this just allows you to help control the deck as you pull it out from underneath the machine. You can see what I'm talking about. It started to kick out to the left, but I was able to correct that by pulling a little bit more on the right side of the strap. And you want to pull it out till you have access to this spring and this cable. Now in my experience, there are 3 particular areas on this mower deck that are extremely prone to failure that would cause the mower blades to remain engaged. Now failure point number 1 would be the clutch engagement cable. Failure point number 2 would be a worn piece of steel right here. What happens, this is a brake, and what happens over time, it wears and creates a dimple where this clutch pulley slides forward and back, and that dimple could cause the blades to sit in an engaged position. Failure point number 3 would be the clutch return spring, which sits here. So let me kind of run down the list here, because I know for a fact I have a faulty clutch engagement cable. So if I go to engage the mower deck blades, for one, I notice it requires a tremendous amount of force to pull that lever up and engage the blades. Now when I go to disengage the blades, notice that this pulley is not retracting back. And that's an issue. What I'm noticing, for one, when I pull back on this cable manually, it requires a tremendous amount of force to pull this cable back. That should not be so. So I know for a fact I have a faulty cable. I ordered a new part, should be here tomorrow, we'll put it in tomorrow. But a replacement cable, $10. I'll leave links for that in the description down below. Now jumping to failure point number 3 would be the clutch return spring. This is not the original clutch return spring. Mine failed at some point, and I had this spring in the toolbox. I threw it on. It was working all right for a while, but it stretched, and this is just not providing enough pull to disengage the clutch pulley. So I will be replacing this spring. A replacement costs $5. Again, I'll leave a link in the description down below. So between those 2 issues, I know that's why the blades are remaining engaged. But there is another failure point that is extremely prone to failure. I've repaired it in the past with a welder. Now failure point number 2, in order to give you a closer look at that, we're going to need to remove this deck the rest of the way. So let me show you how to do that. So we need to finish disconnecting the clutch engagement cable. So this is the clutch pulley, and on top of the clutch pulley, you'll notice we have another hairpin cotter and a spring. So we're going to pull a hairpin cotter out of the way, lift the spring up. We'll put that hairpin cotter back into place. And if we look towards our left, you can see where this cable connects to a post on the mower deck. So to disconnect this connection, pull a hairpin cotter out, pull back, and simply remove this cable up out of the way. The mower deck is now completely disconnected from the underside of the machine, thus we can grab onto our ratchet strap and finish pulling this deck out from underneath the machine. Alright, so let's talk about failure point number 2 in detail. So when you engage your blades, what happens? That cable pulls on this deck belt engagement pulley back. And that does 2 things. For one, it tensions the belt onto the motor output shaft, thus causing the belt to engage, causing the blades to spin. But another thing that happens is there's actually a brake shoe that disengages on the right spindle as well as the left spindle. You're not going to be able to see it because the guard's there, but this is for that brake shoe lever. You can see how it pulls off that spindle pulley. Now the way it pulls off that pulley is by way of a friction point on the steel plate that is attached to the clutch pulley. Yeah, that's a mouthful. So this is the steel plate that the clutch pulley attaches to, and this is, again, the lever for the brake shoe. Notice how it pulls away from that spindle pulley when we engage our blades. Now what happens over time, especially this point right here, where this lever for the brake shoe sits on the steel for the clutch pulley, it will wear a dimple into the steel right here. And when that dimple wears in, it's very difficult for this pulley to disengage because, you have a little dimple of engagement right there. So if you notice that a dimple is forming there, you have 2 options. Option 1, which I've done twice in the past, is to unbolt this brake shoe lever, pull the pulley back, and then you have decent access to weld material back onto the steel plate here. So that is an option. Or you could simply replace this component entirely. Not a big deal. I'll leave a link for this component in the description down below. But if you'd like to see the weld video on how I've repaired that in the past, I'll leave a link for that video in the description down below. It's an older video, not sure how well that video came out, but I just wanted to point that out to you because I have repaired this twice, and that is definitely an issue. And another thing I'm noticing here, again, our clutch return spring, because I've replaced that, it's just not as strong as it needs to be. Like, I don't feel any dimples. However, there's just enough friction that prevents the pulley from pulling back because we don't have a good clutch return spring. So we're going to fix that by replacing that spring. Now, to have better access to replace that clutch engagement cable, first I'm going to remove the hood. In order to remove the hood, I'm going to rotate it up, and at the front right of the tractor, there's going to be an electrical connection for the front headlights. So you're simply just going to have to pull that connection apart. Just a little bit of pressure. Should come right apart. And then to remove the hood from the tractor, while the hood is up, just lift straight up. You may have to work the hood back a little bit. It's like pin and slot construction, so we'll get the hood out of the way. Now that cable is routed through this cavity. In order to get better access to that cavity, I'm going to unbolt the fuel tank. I'm going to leave the fuel line attached, but we're just going to lift this up and move it out of the way. To remove this fuel tank, fuel cell, there are two 3/8 inch bolts. I have the fuel tank perched between the engine and this front dash panel. To ensure that this doesn't wander on me, I'm going to clamp the tab on the fuel tank to the front dash with an 11R vice grip. Next thing I'm going to do is remove these 4 fasteners on either side of the clutch engagement lever. I'm also going to remove the ball on the top of this lever. And by removing these fasteners, this will allow us to unfasten this mechanism from the underside of the dash and kind of slide it out into this little cavity that we've created underneath where the fuel tank typically sits. And that way we have good, clear, easy access to work on the mechanism and replace that cable. Now from the underside of the dash, we should be able to work this assembly out of the way of this wiring mess. Get this to a position where it's easy to access and work on. Alright, so I have the new cable in hand. First thing I want to point out, look how effortlessly the cable slides within that protective sleeve. That's how it should be. Next thing I want to point out, there are 2 connections where this cable attaches to the lever mechanism. First, we have a pin and slot connector. That is right here. And the second connection, you know, it's one of these plastic insertion connectors. So for the lower connector, we're going to have to take a pair of needle nose, bend these tabs in, and pop this lower connector out. I'm actually going to try pulling straight up with a pair of needle nose pliers first. See if it comes out. And it did. So you can see that's where that connection point is. There's a little ball right there, a little hard to see, but it's there. You can see our second connection right there, where those plastic tabs are kind of inserted into this receiving bracket. So we'll try and get in here with the needle nose pliers again, bend these tabs in, see if we can pop this old cable out of here. There we go. So when we install the new cable, it's really important that we pay attention to the routing of the old cable. Ideally, we want it to follow the same track. That's how it's engineered, and that's how it should be. So there's a hole in the floor of the engine compartment right here, right where that leaf is. This is the old cable. So the old cable goes behind this round cross member and through the hole in the floor. So what I'm going to do from the underside of the machine, I'm going to trace the old cable, and I'm going to have the new cable come up and follow the path of the old cable now. Now with my new cable coming up through the engine compartment of the machine, I'm going to start pulling at the old cable. Now we can start attaching the new cable to the clutch lever assembly. Now I'm going to start by making this lower connection. So you see we have the hole in the tin. These plastic tabs get inserted through this tin. Should hear a distinct click, or that, a little thud, that's fine. So I'm going to rotate this slightly, and then the other connection is just kind of like, I wouldn't call it a ball and slot, but it's kind of like a pin and slot connection here. Let me readjust the camera. Alright, I think a pair of needle nose pliers is going to be your best friend here. So you can see the pin on the lever. I had the slot sandwiched in between a pair of needle nose pliers, so we're going to line this up, firm downward pressure, and insert this onto that pin. And that is in position. So we can now take this clutch lever assembly and reinstall it back into the underside of the dash. Now the biggest tip I have for you here, after you get this assembly bolted back onto the dash, pay very close attention to the wire harness here. Look for any areas where wires are rubbing directly onto a sharp edge. If you have to, get in here with some zip ties and pull this harness away from any sharp edges. If you don't do that, you may find that, a year or two down the road, there's a direct short, you're chasing some wiring demons because a piece of wire jacket was rubbing on a sharp edge and it caused a short. So, always try and insulate and isolate these wires from any sharp edges. That's my tip. Wires are up out of the way. Now we can reinstall the fuel tank. And we can also reinstall a hood. And here's a closer look at that electrical connection for the headlights. It's a T-style connector. Real simple, you can't screw it up. Just showing you the old cable here. The cable is about seized in the protective sleeve. I cannot pull that in one direction or the other by hand. So it was definitely time to replace that cable. Anyway, before we reinstall the deck on the underside of the machine, the final thing we have to do is to replace the clutch return spring on the clutch pulley and the deck. So here's my current clutch return spring, and as mentioned earlier, my old one broke and I put this on because it's what I had in my arsenal of miscellaneous fasteners. But if I engage the clutch, that's engaged. This should automatically retract back, of course, because we don't have a cable connected to this clutch pulley, and it does not. So this spring is not strong enough to overcome the friction of everything moving. So let's remove this old spring I have here and install a proper clutch return spring, which is pretty cheap. They're about $5. You could get two for probably $7 or $8. I'll leave links for these in the description down below. Okay, so the clutch return spring stretches from here to here. Since we replaced that clutch return spring, everything is functioning as it should. This is with the clutch engaged, and then disengaged. It retracts back to where it should be, and this is how it should operate. Now we need to attach the clutch engagement cable onto this bracket on the deck. So there is a horizontal slot and a vertical slot. We're going to start by taking the cable and routing it through the horizontal slot. If you take a look at the cable where the jacket ends, the protective sleeve ends, there's kind of a vertical plastic piece that gets inserted into the vertical slot like that. Pretty simple. There's a plastic washer in between this protrusion and the spring, so we're going to slide the plastic washer back. And then finally, there's a little hole right here and a little slot, and we're going to insert our hairpin cotter to lock this assembly onto the bracket. Now we can redirect our attention to the clutch pulley. So we're going to remove our hairpin cotter. Spring will go on top of the post. And then we just reinsert our hairpin cotter like that. There should be a washer supporting the base of that spring. Now before we slide this deck underneath the machine the rest of the way, what you should do is you should cycle the clutch engagement lever a few times to ensure that this assembly is functioning properly. So currently the blades are disengaged. Going onto the dash, I'm going to engage the blades. And you can see this clutch pulley pulls back, it tightens up the belt, which would cause the belt to engage with the engine output shaft. That is functioning properly. Now when I disengage the blades, we should see this pulley automatically slide forward towards the front of the machine. And that is functioning properly. Now from the left side of the machine, I'm going to grab onto my ratchet strap and I'm going to pull this deck underneath the machine. Now the first connection point I'm going to line up, there's a stabilizer bracket that sits on the deck over here. We're going to line it up with this pin. Next, I'm going to wrap the belt onto the motor output shaft pulley. So there is a catch or a guard on the right side of the machine. So I'm going to start by getting the belt over that guard or guide. We're just going to route it into the groove of the pulley. Should go on pretty easy. Next, we need to drop the mower deck lift arm. So take that mower deck lever and lower it all the way down. So there's our connection we're looking to make. I'm going to sneak a finger underneath the front of the deck, sneak a hand underneath the front of the deck, lift up, and insert the pin into the slot there. So there's our lift arm. It's on the back side of the bracket. So we're going to lift up, push it forward, down, sneak a hand underneath the deck, lift up, and just align the pin in the slot and install the hairpin cotter. Now I'm going to lift the mower deck up to position 4, a little bit more than halfway. And what we need to do now, we need to align the pin from this linkage into the slot in this bracket. So what you're going to have to do, you're going to have to pull forward a little bit, but that pin should drop right into the hole in the bracket there. You can see the hole for where the hairpin cotter goes. Shouldn't take much. Do the same thing on the other side. Now I lost the pin for this side, so I use a cotter pin. Then cotter pin, and that seems to work out all right. And that's all there is to it. That's how you reinstall a mower deck on a Craftsman LT2000. Repair is complete. Final thing to do is to fire the machine up. We'll see if the blades remain disengaged when we start. We'll test to see if we can engage the blades and then disengage them and have them stop spinning while the machine's running as well. And that is a good repair. I'd like to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching today's video. If you're interested in any of the parts that you have seen in today's video, I will leave links in the description down below. And I'll also try and tag the playlist in which I have many other repair videos on this machine as well in the description down below. Thank you for watching. As always, I will catch you on the next one.